Friday at the age of 90, and we've done different interviews, and so you have different reactions to his death. You've got white Cubans who are frankly celebrating the death of Castro, talked about his reign there, of course, running Batista out of the country, but you also have a different reaction from some African countries, but also African Americans, but specifically black farmers. 2013, Castro agreed to a deal to purchase up to $25 million worth of agricultural goods produced by African-American farmers. The deal was negotiated at the same time black farmers were suing the U.S. government for racial discrimination involving farm loans. Joining us now is John Boyd, founder and president of the National Black Farmers Association. So, John, again, this is one of the. I saw the Black Enterprise story about this as well. This is one of those stories that. When I talked the other day about Castro and his legacy being complex,
right?
And I saw this debate on MSNBC with Soledad O'Brien and his one Cuban American who was just blasting, no, this guy was a killer, he was a dictator. And I said, okay, you can be that and this at the same time. Absolutely. And so how did this relationship start between Castro and black farmers?
Well, it started back in 1998 when we first had a meeting with Fidel Castro. And he talked about his need for
So you had a meeting. So you and others were invited to Cuba? Or where did the meeting take place?
It took place in Havana, Cuba. All of them did. We have 5 meetings up until 2005 was our last meeting. The actual contract was secured in 2003 for $6 million, $6+ million per quarter, 4 quarters in a year, about $25 million. And to me, Fidel Castro had a presence larger than his room itself. And the last meeting when we signed the actual contract to supply food to Cuba, the agreement was signed in his house. And we went to his house, and military on both sides of the walls, and he was standing there by himself in full army fatigues, military rifle, and 2 pistols. And I reached my hand out to him, and he said, "John Boyd, my friend, nice to see you." And I said, "My friend, nice to see you." The story was not about the actual contract. The story was about me calling him his friend. I mean, what do people want me to say? I'm in his house, he has army fatigues and 2 pistols on. I'm going to be his enemy? Mm-hmm. But long story short is, this was a very, very historic contract because it was the largest contract with a U.S. organization or company at one time for $25 million. We delivered four shipments to Havana, Cuba, totaling about $6 million before the Bush administration terminated our agreement, saying, hey, your shipping license has been revoked, and we're now reviewing the agreement between black farmers and the Cuban government. And my last trip back to Havana, I was stopped in customs and held for 2 days. And customs, I was not allowed to come back into my country until I answered all of these questions about the talks between the black farmers and the Cuban government.
When you hear people talk about Castro and talk about his legacy, mm-hmm. How important is this relationship that he had with African Americans to this overall legacy?
It's totally important because people need to take a second look at Castro. I'm not saying I support all of his government policies and all of those things, but we need to take a second look because when we were in the meeting, he said, well, we're bored, we share the same blood, and there's no reason why the United States government should not be contracting with black farmers. He said, this contract is a drop in the bucket, according to what you guys should be doing business with in your own country. And he's absolutely right. We have USAID that don't buy any food from African-American farmers. So there's a lot that we can be doing in our own country. And it was after Castro made that statement in the public that the Bush administration revoked our shipping license to continue to ship goods to the Cuban government.
Man, I mean, we know that we live in a country of 330 million people and yet a bubble when it comes to Castro. Right. The rest of the world looks almost the exact opposite in terms of this. And what you're saying, Brother Boyd, is so important because you were legally able to do this. Yes. This was a political decision the Bush administration made.
Right.
What was you sending a message?
We went through all of the necessary requirements through the Treasury Department to travel there and come up with these contracts. We were not the only company that was shipping goods to Cuba. There was Purdue, Tyson's, ConAgra, ADM that was already conducting business with the Cuban government. And,
so why them and not you? I mean,
That's exactly right. You know, black farmers.
We know the answer.
Right, we know the answer. And lastly, Fidel Castro also introduced us to other third world countries, Venezuela. He introduced me to Chavez.
There's the other shoe.
All of these other, Arafat. And all of these countries need this absolute same thing. They need equipment and food. So there's a lot of opportunities if we can work together.
You got to look at this legacy in its totality. You think about Nelson Mandela being freed and Castro playing a significant role and being a big voice there. Again, you got to look at the whole record.
Isn't free trade great? I mean, this is what we should be doing. I mean, we should be applying this concept beyond just your situation, which is a great one, where you had a good that somebody else wanted, and you were able to negotiate a deal free from government intervention, and that's what we should be doing. So whether that's Putin, whether that's Malaysia, whether that's Saudi Arabia, I mean, let's let the people trade goods for the benefit of the whole.
Yeah, until they intervened, of course.
And lastly,
state intervened.
Right, this president who went down and opened doors, with the Cuban government. I know that President-elect is not in support of that, and they're looking to roll back the clocks there.
You think he's going to go through with that? I mean,
I hope he does.
And leave the region open to people like China who already made overtures. And
That's
I mean,
right.
that would be so backward looking.
It would be horrible for this country. And for this president, President Barack Obama, and I think this country is going to miss this president. African Americans are going to miss this president. And we have to do more to lift up his legacy. For him going to Cuba was such a huge step. It was underplayed in the media to me, Roland. It should have been more highlighted, his trip to Cuba and the actual outcome, opening up doors and visitation. All of these things have been stagnant for decades.
All right, then. John Boyd, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
All right, folks. Protesters, including Native Americans from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, North Dakota, are ordered to leave their protest camp. We will talk to a reporter there next about this very issue. News 1 Now TV 1.